The stagecoach lurched to a stop in Julian, California, and Olivia Marshall stepped down into the dusty street with nothing but 2 carpetbags, a Singer sewing machine, and dreams that felt increasingly foolish with each passing moment. It was late summer in 1878, and the gold mining town perched in the Cuyamaca Mountains had seemed like Providence when she had read about it in San Diego. A thriving community, the advertisement had promised, full of miners and merchants who surely needed someone skilled with needle and thread. What the advertisement had not mentioned was that Julian already had 2 seamstresses, both well-established with customer bases built over years, both regarding Olivia with cool suspicion when she rented the tiny storefront on Main Street. Her first week brought exactly 3 customers. One wanted a button replaced and paid her 10 cents. Another asked prices for a wedding dress, blanched at Olivia's quote, and went directly to Mrs. Henderson's shop 2 doors down. The third was a confused elderly gentleman looking for the barber shop. By the second week, Olivia was rationing her meals to 1 a day. By the third week, she was considering whether pride or starvation was the more bitter pill to swallow. She had no money for a return ticket to Boston, no family waiting even if she did. Her aunt had made it abundantly clear that Olivia had made her choice when she headed west, and that choice did not include crawling back in defeat. She was stitching a sampler in her window, more for appearances than purpose, when a shadow fell across her threshold. Olivia looked up to find a man filling her doorway, tall and broad-shouldered, his dark hair slightly too long beneath his worn Stetson. Dust covered his boots and the lower part of his denim trousers. His face was tanned and weathered in a way that spoke of years under the California sun, with lines at the corners of his eyes that suggested either frequent smiling or frequent squinting. He might have been 30 or 35, she could not quite tell. "You are the new seamstress." His voice was deep, measured, with a quality that made her think of steady things, reliable things. "I am Olivia Marshall." She set down her needlework and stood, smoothing her skirts with damp palms. "How may I help you?" He removed his hat, revealing more of his dark hair, slightly curled with perspiration. "Declan Carter. I run a cattle ranch about 8 miles northeast of town. I am in need of some sewing work." Hope fluttered in her chest like a captive bird. "Of course. What did you have in mind?" "New shirts." "I need 6 of them." He paused, then added, "For myself. 6 shirts. The commission would keep her fed for a month, possibly more if she was careful." "I can certainly do that. Do you have fabric preferences?" "I have several bolts of shirting material, or I can order something specific if you like." "I will need to see what you have." Olivia brought out her fabric samples, spreading them across the small counter. Declan Carter examined each one with surprising attention, running the material between his fingers with the same careful assessment she imagined he would give a horse or a head of cattle. He selected a sturdy cotton in dark blue and another in gray. 3 of each," he said. "And I will need measurements taken. Of course, if you will stand just here." Olivia retrieved her measuring tape, trying to ignore the sudden flutter of nerves. She had measured dozens of men in Boston while apprenticing with her aunt. This was no different. Except somehow it felt different when she stepped closer to Declan Carter, catching the scent of leather and sage and something clean beneath the trail dust. She worked quickly, professionally, calling out measurements as she noted them in her ledger. His shoulders were broad, his waist lean. He stood perfectly still as she worked, and she was aware of his eyes following her movements. "These will be ready in 2 weeks, she said, stepping back and tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "That will be fine." "What is the cost?" She named her price, expecting negotiation. Instead, he reached into his pocket and counted out bills, including an advance deposit that was more than generous. "I appreciate quality work," he said simply. "I expect you provide that. I do. You will not be disappointed, Mr. Carter." He settled his hat back on his head. "I am certain I will not be. Good day, Miss Marshall." She watched him walk to where his horse was tied, a beautiful bay gelding that nuzzled his shoulder as he mounted. Then he was riding down Main Street, and Olivia was left holding money that felt like salvation in her palm. She worked on those shirts with more care than she had given anything in months. Every stitch was perfect, every seam straight and strong. She reinforced the shoulders and elbows, added pearl buttons she had brought from Boston, and pressed each completed shirt until it was crisp and presentable. When Declan Carter returned exactly 2 weeks later, she had them wrapped in brown paper and string. He unwrapped the package slowly, examining each shirt with that same careful attention he had given the fabric. Something in his expression softened as he ran his hand over her work. "These are exceptional," he said finally. "Thank you. I hope they serve you well." "I am certain they will." He paused, then added, "I am also in need of new trousers, 4 pairs if you can manage it, and some kitchen curtains for my ranch house. The ones there now are near to falling apart." "More work, enough work to keep her going for another month at least." "I can absolutely manage that. When would you need them?" "No particular hurry. A month, perhaps." They arranged the details. He paid another advance, and once again, Olivia was left watching him ride away with a feeling she could not quite name warming her chest. Mrs. Henderson made a point of stopping by Olivia's shop the next morning. "I see you have acquired Mr. Carter's business," she said, her tone sharp with something that might have been disapproval or might have been envy. "He needed some shirts made," Olivia replied carefully. "Interesting. The man has not commissioned new clothing in the 5 years I have had my shop." Mrs. Henderson adjusted her shawl with a sniff. "He always makes do with what he has or buys ready-made from the general store, but perhaps his standards have suddenly risen." After the woman left, Olivia sat at her sewing machine, troubled. She had been so grateful for the work that she had not questioned it. But now Mrs. Henderson's words planted seeds of doubt. Why would a rancher who made do with worn clothing suddenly need 6 new shirts, 4 pairs of trousers, and kitchen curtains? The possibility that formed in her mind seemed too far-fetched to entertain. Men like Declan Carter, successful ranchers with property and prospects, did not invent work for struggling seamstresses out of charity. Did they? She pushed the thought aside and focused on her sewing. Whatever his motivations, the work was real and the payment was genuine, and that was what mattered. The trousers and curtains were ready in 3 weeks. Olivia had outdone herself with the curtains, adding delicate embroidered details along the edges, little flowers and vines that had taken hours but had felt important somehow. When Declan arrived to collect them, his eyes went immediately to those embroidered flowers. "You did not have to add this detail," he said, his voice quiet. "I wanted them to be special. A house should feel like a home." Something passed across his face, too quick for her to read. "Would you like to see how they look in the windows? I could bring you out to the ranch." "I am heading back now, and it is a pleasant ride." Propriety suggested she should decline. A young, unmarried woman did not go riding off to an isolated ranch with a man she barely knew. But Boston propriety had already failed Olivia in so many ways, and she found herself curious about this man who had appeared like an answer to prayer at her lowest moment. "I would like that," she said. He helped her into his wagon, her carpet bag of sewing supplies beside her in case adjustments were needed, and they headed northeast out of Julian into rolling hills golden with late summer grass. The ranch, when it came into view, was more impressive than she had imagined. A solid house with a wide porch, a large barn, corrals holding cattle and horses, and several outbuildings all well maintained and prosperous looking. "You have built something substantial here," Olivia said. "It has taken 10 years. I came to California after the war, worked other men's ranches until I had enough saved to buy my own land. It has been a good life." He glanced at her. Lonely at times, but good. He helped her down from the wagon, his hand steady at her waist, and showed her into the house. The interior was clean but sparse, functional rather than comfortable. The kind of place where a man lived alone and saw no reason to add softness or beauty. The kitchen was spacious with a large window over the dry sink. The curtains there were indeed falling apart, sun-rotted and sad. "May I?" Olivia gestured to the curtain rod. "Please." She took down the old curtains and hung the new ones, and the transformation was immediate. The white fabric with its delicate embroidered border caught the afternoon light, making the whole room feel brighter, more alive, more like a home. Declan stood in the doorway watching, and when she turned to gauge his reaction, the expression on his face made her breath catch. "They are perfect," he said. "You are very talented, Miss Marshall. Thank you, and thank you for the work. You have quite literally kept me from going hungry these past weeks. Is it that difficult? I thought surely a woman with your skills would be thriving." Olivia laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Julian already has seamstresses who have been here for years. I was foolish to think there would be room for another. Most days I sit in my shop with no customers at all. That seems an oversight on Julian's part." He moved to the stove where a coffee pot sat. "Would you like some coffee? I was going to make a pot anyway." They sat at his kitchen table drinking coffee, and somehow the conversation flowed easily. He told her about the ranch, about the challenges of raising cattle in the mountains, about his hope to expand his herd. She told him about Boston, about learning the seamstress trade from her aunt who was exacting and critical and never satisfied, about the impulse that had driven her to answer an advertisement for opportunities out west. "You regret coming?" he asked. "I did not think I would survive in Boston. My aunt made it clear I was a burden. When she arranged a marriage for me to a man 3 times my age who wanted a housekeeper more than a wife, I knew I had to leave. So no, I do not regret coming west. I only regret not researching better before choosing Julian. Julian is not so bad. Julian does not need a third seamstress." Declan was quiet for a moment, turning his coffee cup in his hands. Then he said, "What if you had a steady customer? Someone who could keep you busy enough to make a living? Are you offering to commission more work?" "I am offering to commission whatever work you can do. I need new shirts and trousers, yes, but I also need bedding, tablecloths, more curtains for the other rooms, perhaps some chair cushions. This house has been purely functional since I built it. It could use a woman's touch." Olivia set down her cup carefully. "Mr. Carter, that is very kind, but I cannot accept charity. It is not charity if you are providing me with goods I genuinely need and want." His dark eyes met hers steadily. "I can afford it, Miss Marshall. The ranch is profitable. And I would rather my money go to someone who needs it than sit in a bank account." "Why me?" The question hung in the air between them. Declan looked away first, toward the window where her new curtains moved gently in the breeze. "Because when I came to town 3 weeks ago and saw you sitting in your shop window, you looked like hope and desperation in equal measure, and I remember what that feels like. And because your work is exceptional and deserves to be valued. And because—" He paused, then continued more quietly, "because I have not been able to stop thinking about you since that first day, and commissioning work seemed like the only respectable way to keep seeing you." Olivia's heart was beating too fast. "That is very honest. I find dishonesty exhausting. If my interest makes you uncomfortable, I apologize. I can take you back to town immediately and we need not speak of this again. But if it does not make you uncomfortable, I would like to continue seeing you. And I would genuinely like to hire you to make this house into a home. She should have been scandalized. She should have demanded he take her back to town immediately. Instead, she found herself looking around the sparse kitchen, imagining what it could be with care and attention, and realizing that she had not stopped thinking about Declan Carter either. I would need to maintain my shop hours in town, she said slowly, in case other customers come, of course. And I would need to be paid fair prices for fair work, nothing inflated out of pity. Agreed. And we should probably have a chaperone when I am working here, for propriety's sake. My ranch foreman's wife, Maria, helps with the cooking and cleaning twice a week. I am certain she would be happy to be present whenever you are here. She has been telling me for years that this place needs a woman's touch. Olivia took a breath. Then I accept your commission, Mr. Carter. All of it. The smile that crossed his face was like sunrise. Please call me Declan. If we are going to be seeing each other regularly, formality seems unnecessary. Then you should call me Olivia. They shook hands on it, and his hand was warm and calloused and strong, and Olivia felt that flutter in her chest again, stronger this time. Over the following weeks, a pattern developed. Olivia would spend her mornings in her shop in Julian, where customers remained scarce, but at least occasionally materialized with minor mending work. In the afternoons, Declan would arrive with his wagon and drive her out to the ranch, where she would measure windows and rooms, discuss fabric choices and color preferences, and gradually begin to transform his austere house into something warmer. Maria, the foreman's wife, was a plump, cheerful woman in her 40s who immediately saw through the entire arrangement and approved wholeheartedly. That man needs a good woman, she told Olivia the first day, not bothering to lower her voice even though Declan was just in the next room. He has been alone too long, works too hard, never has any fun. You are good for him. I am just his seamstress, Olivia protested. Maria's laugh was knowing. Of course you are, Mija, and I am the Queen of England. But Declan was careful to maintain respectability. He never touched her beyond helping her in and out of the wagon. He never said anything improper. They talked while she worked, long conversations about everything and nothing. And Olivia found herself learning the contours of his character, the kindness and integrity and dry humor that made her look forward to each afternoon with an anticipation that felt dangerously close to longing. She made curtains for every window in his house, each set embroidered with different patterns. Wildflowers for the kitchen, geometric designs for his study, delicate leaves for the parlor. She made tablecloths and napkins, quilts for the beds, cushions for the chairs. The house transformed around them, becoming the home he had never quite achieved on his own. You have a gift, he said one afternoon, standing in his now cheerful parlor. Not just for sewing, but for seeing what a place could be. I used to dream about having a home of my own, Olivia admitted. In Boston, I lived in my aunt's house, but it never felt like mine. I would imagine what I would do if I ever had my own space, what colors I would choose, what small touches would make it feel welcoming. Did you ever imagine it would be in California? No. I imagined something much smaller and probably much less interesting. Declan turned to look at her, and something in his expression made her heart race. Olivia, I need to tell you something. Before he could continue, Maria bustled in with coffee and biscuits, and the moment passed. But Olivia lay awake that night in her small room above her shop, wondering what he had been about to say. Autumn came to the mountains, painting the landscape in golds and russets. Olivia's shop finally attracted a few more customers, women who had seen her work at the general store where she had started displaying some finished pieces on consignment. The income was still modest, but combined with Declan's regular commissions, she was no longer on the edge of starvation. More importantly, she was happy. Happier than she had been in Boston, happier than she had imagined possible when she first arrived in Julian, feeling foolish and afraid. It was late October when everything changed. Declan arrived at her shop earlier than usual, his expression troubled. "I need to go to San Diego for cattle business. I will be gone about 10 days. I wanted you to know so you would not worry when I did not come to town." 10 days is a long time, Olivia said, and was embarrassed by how bereft she sounded. "I know. I have been putting this trip off, but it cannot be delayed any longer." He hesitated, then reached into his pocket. "I want to give you something." He handed her a small leather pouch. Inside was more money than she had ever held at once. "Declan, I cannot accept this. I have not done enough work to justify this payment." "It is not payment, it is a gift, a safety net. In case anything happens while I am gone, I want to know you are taken care of." What could happen in 10 days? But his expression remained serious. "Please, Olivia, take it. For my peace of mind." She closed her fingers around the pouch. "Only if you promise to come back safely." "I promise." He reached out then, the first time he had truly touched her beyond the practical assistance of helping her into wagons, and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers lingered against her cheek. "I have become quite attached to my seamstress. It would be very inconvenient to have to find another." "I have become quite attached to my rancher as well," she whispered. For a moment she thought he might kiss her. Instead, he squeezed her hand gently and stepped back. 10 days, he said. "Then we should talk, really talk." "About what?" "About what happens next, for both of us." Then he was gone, and Olivia was left in her shop, holding a leather pouch and a hope that felt almost too fragile to acknowledge. The first week passed slowly. Olivia threw herself into work, taking on every small job that came through her door. She made a christening gown for a miner's daughter, mended a torn coat, altered a dress. In the evenings, she worked on a project for herself, something she had been planning for weeks. A new shirt for Declan, made from the finest fabric she had, every stitch a small prayer. The second week was harder. Declan had said 10 days, and by the 8th day, Olivia caught herself watching the street for his wagon with an intensity that bordered on obsession. On the 9th day, she heard the news. Mrs. Henderson was the one who told her, coming into the shop with barely concealed excitement at being the bearer of dramatic information. "Have you heard about the stagecoach robbery?" Olivia's blood went cold. "What robbery?" "Between here and San Diego. Bandits stopped the stage and took everything of value, shot one of the passengers who resisted." Mrs. Henderson leaned in conspiratorially. "They say it was a rancher from around here, Declan Carter. They say he might not survive." The world tilted. Olivia gripped the edge of her counter, trying to breathe. "Where is he?" "They took him to San Diego, to the hospital there. But it has been 3 days already. If he has not recovered by now." Olivia did not wait to hear the rest. She closed her shop, threw some essentials into a carpet bag, and went directly to the livery stable. "I need passage to San Diego, the fastest way possible." The livery owner, an older man named Joseph, looked at her with concern. "That is a hard journey, miss, not one a lady should make alone." "I have to get there, please." Something in her voice must have convinced him. "The morning stage leaves at dawn. I will make sure you have a seat." That night was the longest of Olivia's life. She lay in her bed, unable to sleep, thinking about Declan, the way he smiled, the way he listened when she talked, the gentle strength in his hands. The possibility that he might die, that she might never see him again, was unbearable. She thought about what Mrs. Henderson had said, that Declan had not commissioned clothing in 5 years before she arrived. That he had created work for her, created reasons to see her, because he had been too honorable to simply court her outright when she was struggling and vulnerable. She thought about the feel of his fingers against her cheek, the promise in his voice when he said they needed to talk. At dawn, she boarded the stagecoach with 4 other passengers and began the long journey south. The road was rough, the day hot, and every mile felt like an eternity. They stopped twice to change horses, and Olivia could barely force herself to eat or drink anything. San Diego was a confusion of streets and buildings and too many people. Olivia, who had lived in Boston, still felt overwhelmed. She asked directions to the hospital and walked there on unsteady legs. The hospital was a low building that smelled of carbolic and suffering. A nurse at the entrance tried to stop her. "I am looking for Declan Carter. He was brought here 3 days ago with a gunshot wound." The nurse's expression softened with pity. "Are you family?" "I am his fiancée," Olivia lied without hesitation. "Third door on the left." "But miss, you should prepare yourself. He has been unconscious since they brought him in. The doctor is not optimistic." Olivia walked down the corridor on legs that threatened to give out. She pushed open the third door on the left and found Declan lying in a narrow bed, his face pale, his breathing shallow. A bandage covered his left shoulder, spotted with blood. She pulled a chair to his bedside and took his hand. It was warm, which felt like a blessing. She pressed it against her cheek. "You promised," she whispered. "You promised you would come back. You said we needed to talk, so you have to wake up, Declan, you have to." She sat with him all day and into the evening. A doctor came by, an exhausted-looking man who examined Declan and shook his head. "The bullet came out clean and the wound is not infected, but he has lost a lot of blood and the shock was severe. Whether he wakes up is in God's hands now. Can he hear me? No one knows for certain. But it cannot hurt to talk to him." So Olivia talked. She told Declan about the new customers who had come to her shop, about the dress she was making for the mayor's wife, about the shirt she had made for him, carefully folded in her carpet bag. She told him about the first time she saw him standing in her doorway like salvation made solid, about how her afternoons at his ranch had become the bright center of her days, about how somewhere between measuring him for shirts and hemming curtains, she had fallen completely and irrevocably in love with him. "So you have to wake up," she said, her voice breaking, "because I never got to tell you that, and I need you to know. I need you to know that you are not alone anymore, that you have not been alone since the day you walked into my shop. I am here, and I am not leaving." The night nurse tried to make her go to a hotel, but Olivia refused to leave. She dozed in the chair, her head on the bed beside Declan's hand, and woke with every slight movement or change in his breathing. Dawn was breaking through the window when she felt it. A slight squeeze of her fingers, so faint she thought she imagined it. Then it came again, stronger. "Declan." She lifted her head, her heart pounding. "Can you hear me?" His eyelids fluttered, opened. His dark eyes were confused at first, then focused on her face. "Olivia." His voice was barely a whisper. "What are you doing here, being stubborn? Do not try to move. You have been shot." "I remember. Bandits on the road. I tried to stop them from taking a woman's wedding ring and one of them shot me." He winced, trying to shift position. "How long have I been here?" 3 days. "They brought you to San Diego. I came as soon as I heard." "You came all the way from Julian." "Of course I did." "You promised we would talk. I was not going to let you break that promise." Something that might have been a smile crossed his pale face. "Always so practical. Someone has to be." She brushed his hair back from his forehead, not caring any more about propriety or caution. "You scared me terribly." "I am sorry." His hand tightened on hers. Olivia, what you said, while I was unconscious, I heard some of it, I think, or I dreamed it. Did you say you loved me? She had not realized he might have heard. Heat flooded her face, but she met his eyes steadily. Yes, I did, and I meant it. Good. His thumb traced circles on her palm. Because I have loved you since the day you took my measurements and looked so fierce and determined. I have been trying to find the courage to tell you and the right way to court you properly. I did not want you to feel obligated because I was giving you work. I never felt obligated. I felt grateful, and then I felt curious, and then I felt. She struggled for words, like I had found something I did not know I was looking for. Stay, he whispered. Stay with me, not just here in the hospital. Stay with me. Marry me. Make that house into our home instead of just mine. You are proposing while lying in a hospital bed with a bullet wound in your shoulder. I am proposing because I just survived being shot, and it made me realize I do not want to waste any more time. Life is too uncertain. If you need me to do it properly later on one knee with a ring, I will. But right now I just need to know. Will you marry me, Olivia Marshall? She was crying and laughing at the same time. Yes. Yes, of course, yes. He pulled her down, clumsy with weakness and the wound, and kissed her for the first time. His lips were dry and his grip was shaky, but it was perfect anyway, the seal on a promise that had been building since the day they met. The doctor was amazed by Declan's improvement. Within days, he was sitting up, eating real food, demanding to be released. Within a week, he was well enough to travel, though still weak. Olivia sent a telegram to Maria at the ranch, explaining the situation and their engagement, and received an enthusiastic response that suggested Maria had been expecting this outcome all along. They married quietly in San Diego before making the journey back to Julian, because neither of them wanted to wait, and because Declan insisted it was improper for them to travel together otherwise. The ceremony was simple, in a small church with the doctor and 2 nurses as witnesses, but when Declan slipped a simple gold band on Olivia's finger, it felt like the most momentous thing that had ever happened to her. I will get you a proper ring later, he promised. With stones if you want them. This one is perfect, she said, and meant it. The journey back to Julian was slow, accommodating Declan's recovery. They stayed in a hotel in San Diego for a few more days, then made the trip north in careful stages. Olivia was hyper-aware of his every movement, watching for signs of pain or fever, but he continued to heal with remarkable speed. I have a good reason to get better, he told her when she fussed over him. I have a wife now. I have plans. Julian greeted the news of their marriage with a mixture of surprise and satisfaction. Apparently, their attachment had been more obvious than Olivia realized. Mrs. Henderson actually congratulated her, though somewhat sourly. I suppose you will be closing your shop now, she said. Olivia had been thinking about that. Actually, I thought I might keep it, come into town a few days a week. I enjoy the work and we could use the extra income while we build up the ranch. Declan, standing beside her, squeezed her hand. Whatever you want, it is your choice. But the ranch quickly became the center of Olivia's world. She loved the house that she had helped transform, loved the rhythms of ranch life, loved learning about cattle and horses, and the particular challenges of raising livestock in the mountains. She loved watching Declan regain his strength, his body healing until only a scar remained as evidence of how close she had come to losing him. Most of all, she loved the life they were building together. Their first winter was difficult in the ways that all winters were difficult in the mountains. Snow came early and heavy, isolating them for days at a time. But the house was warm and full of light, and Olivia discovered that being snowbound with Declan was not a hardship at all. They would sit by the fire in the evenings, Olivia sewing while Declan read or worked on accounts, and the silence between them was comfortable, full of contentment. "Are you happy?" he asked one night, deliriously. "Are you?" "More than I ever thought possible." He set aside his book and pulled her into his lap. "Do you ever regret coming west? If you had stayed in Boston, you would not have had to struggle so much." "If I had stayed in Boston, I would have married that horrible old man and been miserable for the rest of my life. Coming west was the best decision I ever made. Even when I thought I was failing, even when I was hungry and scared, I was still free. And then I found you." "I am glad you were struggling," he said, then quickly amended. I am not glad you were unhappy. But I am glad you needed work, because it gave me an excuse to meet you. If you had been thriving, I would have had no reason to walk into your shop that day. You could have just asked to court me. Could I? You were barely surviving. If I had tried to court you then, you might have felt pressured to accept me for financial security rather than genuine affection. I needed you to choose me freely." Olivia kissed him slowly. "I choose you. Every day I choose you." Spring brought new challenges and new joys. The ranch work intensified as calving season began. Olivia learned to help with the birthing when needed, to care for sick animals, to ride well enough to help move cattle between pastures. Her hands, once soft from Boston living, became capable and strong. She kept her shop in Julian, visiting twice a week, and gradually built a steady customer base of women who appreciated her skill and reasonable prices. Mrs. Henderson eventually softened toward her, perhaps recognizing that Julian was big enough for multiple seamstresses after all. In late summer, Olivia realized she was pregnant. She told Declan one evening after dinner, simply and directly. "We are going to have a baby. Sometime in late winter, the doctor thinks." His reaction was everything she could have hoped for. Wonder and joy and a fierce protectiveness that made her laugh and cry at the same time. "Are you happy?" she asked. Happy does not even begin to cover it. He placed his hand gently on her still flat stomach. "A baby, our baby. Are you hoping for a boy or a girl?" "I am hoping for a healthy child and a healthy wife. Everything else is secondary." As her pregnancy progressed, Declan became increasingly protective. He did not want her riding, did not want her lifting anything heavy, barely wanted her to leave the house. Olivia bore his concern with patient amusement until it became too restrictive, then sat him down firmly. "I am pregnant, not made of glass. Women have been having babies since the dawn of time while also continuing to live their lives. I will be careful, but I will not be coddled. I just do not want anything to happen to you. Nothing will happen to me. I am strong, I am healthy, and I have an excellent doctor. You need to trust that." He tried, though she caught him watching her with worried eyes throughout the autumn and early winter. The baby came on a cold February night in 1880, arriving with less drama than Declan's anxiety had predicted. Maria served as midwife, competent and calm, while Declan paced outside the bedroom door. "You can come in now," Maria called finally, and Declan burst through the door to find Olivia tired but smiling, holding a tiny bundle. "A boy," she said softly. "A healthy, perfect boy." Declan approached slowly, almost reverently, and looked down at his son. The baby had a shock of dark hair and a red, wrinkled face that Olivia thought was absolutely beautiful. "What should we name him?" Declan asked. They had discussed names for months without settling on anything. But looking at her husband's face, at the overwhelming love and wonder there, Olivia knew. "James," she said. "After your father." Declan's father had died when he was young, before the war. He had told Olivia about him during one of their long evening talks, about the man who had taught him to value integrity and hard work. She had seen his face when he spoke about him, the grief and love that still lingered. James, Declan repeated, his voice rough. James Carter, it is perfect. Parenthood transformed their lives in ways both exhausting and exhilarating. Olivia discovered reserves of energy she had not known she possessed, managing the baby and the household and occasional trips to her shop in Julian. Declan was a devoted father, constantly amazed by his son's development, every small milestone a source of wonder. He smiled at me, he would announce with the same excitement another man might reserve for discovering gold. That was gas, Olivia would reply, but she was smiling too. As James grew from infant to toddler, the ranch prospered. Declan expanded his herd, hired additional help, and established a reputation for quality cattle throughout Southern California. Olivia's sewing business also grew, though she had cut back her hours to focus on motherhood. She took on only special projects now, custom work that challenged her skills and paid well. They were not wealthy, but they were comfortable, and more importantly, they were happy. When James was 3, Olivia discovered she was pregnant again. This time the news brought less anxiety and more confident joy. They knew what to expect now, knew they could manage. Their daughter arrived in early autumn of 1883, a tiny girl with Olivia's lighter coloring and Declan's dark eyes. They named her Sarah, and James was fascinated by his new sister, wanting to help with everything from diaper changes to bedtime songs. Life fell into a rhythm that felt sustainable and good. The children grew, the ranch grew, and Olivia and Declan grew into themselves as partners and parents and people who had built something meaningful together. One evening, when James was 7 and Sarah was 4, Olivia found Declan standing on their porch watching the sunset paint the mountains gold and purple. She slipped her hand into his. "What are you thinking about?" "About how different my life is from what I imagined. I thought I would always be alone. I made peace with that, built a life around it. And then you walked into town with your carpet bags and your sewing machine, looking fierce and scared at the same time, and everything changed. I was terrified that day. I had made this grand gesture, coming west to start over, and it was immediately clear that it was a mistake. Julian did not need me. I was going to fail. Julian did need you. I needed you. I just did not know it until I saw you." Olivia leaned her head against his shoulder. "Do you know what I remember most clearly? The way you examined those fabric samples like they were the most important things in the world, the care you took. I had been treated like an inconvenience for so long, and suddenly here was this man treating my work like it mattered. It did matter. You matter." Inside the house, they heard James and Sarah arguing about something, probably a toy. Maria's voice intervened, settling the dispute with the firm kindness she had perfected over years of helping raise their children. "We should go in," Olivia said. "Get them ready for bed." "In a minute." Declan pulled her closer. "I want to stay here a moment longer with you, remembering how this all started. With 6 shirts you probably did not need. I needed them. Maybe not the shirts specifically, but I needed a reason to know you, to be near you. Those shirts were my excuse. Best shirts I ever made," Olivia said, smiling. "They changed my life. They changed both our lives. They stood together as the sun finished setting and the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. Tomorrow would bring the usual challenges of ranch and family life, the hard work and occasional setbacks that were inevitable. But tonight, in this moment, everything was perfect. James appeared in the doorway, Sarah on his heels. "Mama, Papa, Maria says it is bedtime, but we want to stay up." "Can we, please?" "Absolutely not," Declan said, but he was smiling. "Come on, let us get you two to bed. If you are very good, maybe Mama will tell you a story." "The one about how you met," Sarah said immediately. "I want that one." "You have heard that story 100 times," Olivia protested. But I like it. Tell it again. Please? So they went inside, and after the children were in their nightclothes and tucked into their beds, Olivia sat between them and told the story one more time. About coming west with hope and fear. About the shop with no customers and the growing desperation. About the tall rancher who walked through her door one day and commissioned 6 shirts that probably did not need making. "And then you fell in love," Sarah said contentedly, as if this was the most natural conclusion in the world. "Then we fell in love," Olivia agreed. "And lived happily ever after," James added. "We are still living it," Declan said from the doorway. "The happily ever after is not an ending. It is every day we wake up and choose each other. Every challenge we face together. Every moment of joy we share." After the children were asleep, Olivia and Declan sat in their parlor, the one she had transformed with curtains and cushions years ago. Olivia was working on a quilt. Declan was reading a ranching journal, and the comfortable silence between them was as much a part of their marriage as words. "I am glad you were desperate enough to accept work from a stranger," Declan said suddenly. Olivia looked up from her stitching. "I am glad you were persistent enough to invent work for me. I have a confession. I actually did need those first shirts. The ones I had were practically falling apart, but everything after that, pure invention. I know. I figured it out eventually. Mrs. Henderson made certain I knew you had never commissioned clothing before. You never said anything. I was not about to question my good fortune. Even if the work was invented, the money was real, and I needed it desperately." She paused, then added more softly, "And I liked you. Even then I liked you. So I let myself believe it was legitimate business instead of elaborate courtship. It was both. I really did want those curtains and quilts. I wanted my house to feel like a home. But mostly I wanted an excuse to see you every day, to learn who you were, to see if the connection I felt was real or just loneliness playing tricks on my mind. Was it real? From the very first moment. You were real. We were real. Everything since has been building on that foundation. Years continued to pass in the way years do, each one bringing its own mixture of challenges and blessings. The children grew and developed their own personalities. James was steady and thoughtful like his father, drawn to the ranch and the animals. Sarah was creative and determined like her mother, and showed an early aptitude for drawing and design. When James was 12 and Sarah was 9, Olivia got pregnant again, an unexpected gift that they welcomed with joy. Their second daughter, Emma, arrived healthy and loud and immediately beloved. The ranch continued to prosper. Declan's reputation for quality cattle was established throughout the region, and they were able to expand their holdings, buying adjacent property when it became available. Olivia's sewing business had evolved into something different. She no longer kept regular shop hours, but she was known for being able to create something beautiful for special occasions. Wedding dresses were her specialty, and women came from as far away as San Diego seeking her services. When James was 16, he asked his father if he could start managing one of the outer pastures himself. It was a sign that he was ready to take on more responsibility, to start becoming a partner in the ranch rather than just a helper. Declan agreed, and Olivia watched her son transform into a capable young man who reminded her so much of his father it sometimes took her breath away. Sarah, at 13, had decided she wanted to be a dressmaker in San Francisco, creating fashionable clothing for wealthy women. Olivia supported the dream while also gently explaining the hard realities of the business. But Sarah's determination reminded Olivia of her own younger self, heading west with more courage than sense, and she knew better than to try to discourage her daughter too strenuously. Emma, at 4, was a whirlwind of energy who wanted to do everything her older siblings did. Consequences be damned. She rode before she could barely walk, climbed trees that terrified her mother, and had Declan wrapped completely around her tiny finger. One afternoon in late summer, Olivia was working in her garden when she heard a wagon approaching. She looked up to see an elegant carriage, clearly expensive, clearly out of place on their ranch road. It stopped near the house and a woman stepped down, fashionably dressed in a way that immediately marked her as being from the city. "Can I help you?" Olivia asked, wiping dirt from her hands. "I am looking for Olivia Marshall. I was told she lived here." "I am Olivia Carter now, but yes." "What can I do for you?" The woman smiled. "My name is Catherine Winters. I am from San Francisco. I have heard about your work with wedding dresses. My daughter is getting married next spring and she wants the finest dress possible. Money is no object. I was hoping you might be willing to take the commission." It was the kind of opportunity Olivia would have killed for when she first arrived in Julian, starving and desperate. A wealthy client from the city offering a lucrative commission. Even now, the money would be substantial. But she looked at her garden, at the house behind her where Emma was probably napping, and where Declan would be returning soon from checking the cattle. She thought about the life she had built here, the balance she had found between her work and her family. "I am flattered," she said carefully. "But I am not taking on new projects right now. I have 3 children and a ranch to help manage. My sewing time is limited." Catherine's face fell. "I would pay whatever you ask. Truly, money is not a concern." Olivia hesitated. The amount of money she could charge for a society wedding dress would be significant. It could help pay for Sarah's dreams of going to San Francisco, could provide security for all her children's futures. Then Declan appeared from the barn, leading his horse, and looked at the fancy carriage with raised eyebrows. His eyes found Olivia's across the yard, and she saw the silent question there. "Let me think about it," she told Catherine. "Give me your address in San Francisco. I will send you a letter within the week with my decision." After Catherine left, Declan joined Olivia in the garden. What was that about? A commission? A wedding dress for a wealthy woman in San Francisco, the kind of opportunity I dreamed about once. And I am not certain I want it. The money would be substantial, but the time commitment would be enormous. I would have to neglect other things, important things. Declan pulled her close. "If you want to take it, we will make it work. If you do not want to take it, that is fine too. The choice is yours, and we do not need the money badly enough for you to do something you do not want to do." That night, Olivia thought about the girl she had been when she arrived in Julian. So desperate for work, for survival, that she would have accepted any commission regardless of the cost to her time or energy. But she was not that desperate girl anymore. She had choices now, stability, a life she loved. She wrote to Catherine Winters and declined the commission, recommending 2 other excellent seamstresses in San Francisco who would be thrilled for the opportunity. It felt right. "No regrets?" Declan asked when she told him. "None. I have everything I need right here." The years continued their steady march. James turned 18 and officially became Declan's partner in the ranch. He was capable and confident, with his father's eye for cattle and his mother's head for business. Sarah left for San Francisco at 17, over Olivia's anxious protests, to apprentice with a dressmaker there. She wrote home weekly with enthusiastic descriptions of city life and fashion and opportunities. Emma, at 9, was the one who most loved Olivia's stories about the early days in Julian. She would beg to hear about the empty shop, about the first time Declan walked through the door, about the desperate weeks when survival felt impossible. "Why did you stay?" Emma asked once. "Why did you not just go back to Boston when things were so hard?" "Because going back felt like giving up on myself. And because sometimes the hardest moments are right before everything changes. If I had given up and left Julian, I never would have met your father. You would not exist. Our whole life together would not exist. The struggle was worth it because of what came after. When Olivia was in her early 40s and Declan approaching 50, they found themselves with more time alone than they had had since the early days of their marriage. James was running much of the ranch independently. Sarah was thriving in San Francisco, now working for one of the most prestigious dressmakers in the city. Emma was old enough to spend days with friends or helping with ranch work. "It is strange," Olivia said one evening. "I spent so many years wishing for just a moment of peace, a moment to myself. Now I have it and I miss the chaos." "We could have another baby," Declan suggested, and she could not tell if he was serious or joking. "Absolutely not. 3 is quite enough. I am not starting over with an infant at my age." But the quiet was nice too. They took rides together in the evening, something they had not had time for in years. They traveled to San Diego and stayed in a nice hotel for a week, just the two of them. They rediscovered each other outside the constant demands of children and ranch and responsibilities. One evening, Declan took her back to Julian, to the spot where her original shop had been. It was a bakery now, the Seamstress shop long since closed when Olivia had given up the lease years ago. "Do you remember the first time I walked through that door?" he asked. "I thought you were the answer to my prayers, a customer when I had given up hope of having any. I thought you were the most beautiful woman I had ever seen, fierce and frightened and determined all at once. I invented reasons to commission work because I could not imagine not seeing you again. 6 shirts you did not really need. I needed them, just not for the reasons I claimed." They stood on the street as the sun set, the same sun that had set on Julian for decades, on the desperate girl with a sewing machine and the lonely rancher who had walked into her shop and changed everything. "If you could go back," Declan asked, "knowing everything that was ahead, all the struggles and challenges, would you still come west?" "In a heartbeat. Every difficulty, every moment of fear or uncertainty led me here. To you, to our children, to this life. I would not change a single thing." Years turned into decades. They watched their children marry and start families of their own. James married a rancher's daughter from a neighboring property, and they had 3 children who ran wild on the ranch the same way their father once had. Sarah married a businessman in San Francisco and had twin girls. Emma, surprisingly, married a veterinarian and stayed close to home, establishing a practice that served the ranches throughout the Julian area. Declan and Olivia became grandparents, then were surprised to discover how much more love they had to give when the grandchildren arrived. The house that Olivia had transformed decades ago, with curtains and cushions, now rang with the noise of multiple generations gathering for Sunday dinners and holidays. "This is what I was trying to create," Declan said one Sunday afternoon, watching their extended family spread across the porch and yard. "When I commissioned all that work from you, I was not just trying to court you. I was trying to build a foundation for this, for family, for home." Olivia, now in her 60s with silver threading through her hair, leaned against her husband. "You succeeded. We succeeded. You were the one who made it real, who took my empty house and filled it with warmth and love and life." They were in their 70s when Declan's health began to decline. Nothing dramatic, just the slow wearing down that comes with age and a lifetime of hard physical work. He could no longer ride for hours checking cattle, could no longer do the heavy labor of ranching. James took over more and more of the daily operations, and Declan made peace with becoming an advisor rather than the primary manager. "I feel useless," he confessed to Olivia one evening. "You are not useless. You built something that will last long after we are gone. Look at James, at how capably he runs this place. That is your legacy. You taught him well. We taught him well. He has your practicality and business sense as much as my knowledge of cattle." Olivia's hands, once so nimble with a needle, were now gnarled with arthritis. She could no longer do the fine, detailed work that had made her reputation. But she could still sew simple things, could teach her granddaughters basic stitches and skills, could pass on what she knew. One afternoon, Emma brought over her oldest daughter, 10-year-old Grace, for a sewing lesson. Olivia showed her how to thread a needle, how to make basic stitches, how to repair a torn seam. "Grandma, how did you learn to do this?" Grace asked. "My aunt taught me when I was about your age. She was a seamstress in Boston, and I was her apprentice." "Did you always want to be a seamstress?" Olivia thought about that. "I wanted to be independent, to support myself. Being a seamstress was the skill I had to make that possible. It was more than just a profession. It was freedom." "Is that why you came west, for freedom?" "That and running away from a marriage I did not want." Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is leave behind what is expected and try to build something better. Grace bent over her stitching, tongue caught between her teeth in concentration. She looked so much like Sarah at that age, determined and focused. Did it work out? Building something better. Olivia looked through the window to where Declan sat on the porch, his weathered face turned toward the mountains. Nearly 5 decades of marriage, 3 children, 8 grandchildren, a life built stitch by stitch, day by day. "Yes," she said softly. "It worked out better than I ever dreamed possible." On their 50th wedding anniversary, the whole family gathered at the ranch. James organized the celebration, insisting his parents do nothing but show up. The house was full of people and noise and love. 3 generations of the life Declan and Olivia had built together. Emma had found their wedding photograph, that simple ceremony in San Diego, and had it enlarged and framed. In the image, Declan looked gaunt from his injury but happy, and Olivia looked young and fierce and full of hope. "You were both babies," Sarah said, studying the photograph. "I was 23, Olivia protested. "Hardly a baby. You look so young, so uncertain." "I was terrified. I had just almost lost him. We barely knew each other, and I was marrying a man and moving to a ranch in the middle of nowhere. It was the best decision I ever made, but yes, I was uncertain." Declan joined them, moving slowly but steadily. "I was certain. I knew from the first day I saw you that I wanted to spend my life with you. I just had to convince you to take a chance on a cattle rancher with more ambition than sense. You had plenty of sense, and you were patient. All those invented commissions, giving me time to feel secure and independent before you made your intentions clear. I just did not want to lose you. I would have invented work for you indefinitely if that is what it took to keep you close." As evening fell, their children and grandchildren gathered them outside. The whole family stood together while Sarah's husband, who was an accomplished photographer, set up his equipment to take a family portrait. Olivia looked around at all the faces, each one precious and irreplaceable. The children and grandchildren who would carry their legacy forward. The ranch that would stay in the family for generations. The life that had started with 6 shirts and desperate hope. "Smile," the photographer called, and Olivia smiled, held close against Declan's side, surrounded by evidence that their love had created something enduring. They had a few more years together after that. Good years, quiet years, full of the comfortable routine of a life well lived. They spent mornings on the porch drinking coffee and watching the ranch wake up. They spent afternoons with grandchildren who visited constantly. They spent evenings together, sometimes talking, sometimes in comfortable silence, always together. Declan went first in his sleep one winter night, his hand still holding Olivia's. He was 78, and he had lived a long, full life, but it still felt too soon. The funeral was huge, with ranchers from throughout the region coming to pay respects to a man who had been fair in his dealings and kind to his neighbors. Olivia grieved, but she also felt grateful. 53 years of marriage, a lifetime of love and partnership and joy. So many people never got that. She had been blessed. She continued living in the ranch house for another year, but the rooms felt too empty without Declan's presence. Eventually, at James's gentle urging, she moved into a smaller house on the property, something easier to manage, close enough that family could visit constantly, but not so large that the silence felt oppressive. She spent her final years surrounded by family, teaching her granddaughters to sew, telling stories about the old days, watching the ranch continue to thrive under James's capable management. She lived to see her great-grandchildren born, adding yet another generation to the legacy. On what would have been her 58th wedding anniversary, sitting on the porch of her small house with Emma beside her, Olivia looked out at the ranch spread before her. "He saved me," she said softly. "When I came west, I was drowning and did not even know it. Starving, desperate, terrified I had made a terrible mistake. And then he walked into my shop and invented reasons to give me work, and everything changed." "You saved each other," Emma corrected gently. "He was alone, building a life with no one to share it. You gave him partnership and love and family. It was not one-sided. No, it never was. We built this together." Olivia gestured to the ranch, to the house where multiple generations of their family now lived and worked and loved. "From 6 shirts and stubborn hope, we built all of this." She was 82 when she passed peacefully in her sleep, surrounded by family who had gathered when it became clear the end was near. She was buried beside Declan on a hill overlooking the ranch, with a simple headstone that read, "Olivia Carter, beloved wife, mother, grandmother." She built a home. The ranch continues to this day, passed down through generations of Carters, each one adding their own chapter to the story that began when a desperate seamstress and a lonely rancher found each other in Julian, California in 1878. The house still stands, the curtains that Olivia embroidered all those years ago carefully preserved as family heirlooms. And sometimes, on quiet evenings, the family gathers on the porch and tells the story again, about the girl who came west with nothing but needle and thread and determination. About the rancher who invented work to keep her close. About 6 shirts that changed 2 lives and created a legacy that endures more than a century later. It was not a story of grand gestures or dramatic moments. It was a story of small kindnesses building into love, of patience and persistence, of 2 people who took a chance on each other and built something that lasted. It was a love story told in stitches and cattle and decades of partnership, and it was beautiful in its quiet, enduring truth. The ranch prospered through the 20th century and beyond, each generation adding their own innovations while respecting the foundation that Declan and Olivia had built. James's children eventually took over, then their children, and the Carter name became synonymous with quality cattle ranching in San Diego County. The family made certain that every generation knew the story of how it all began, understanding that their prosperity and stability had roots in those desperate early days in Julian. Sarah's descendants became fashion designers and boutique owners, carrying on Olivia's legacy with fabric and thread in the city that young Sarah had loved. Emma's children became veterinarians and agricultural specialists, serving the ranching community their great-grandmother had called home. Each branch of the family tree grew strong, But they all traced back to that summer day in 1878 when Declan Carter walked into a failing seamstress shop and changed the course of history. In Julian, the old storefront where Olivia had her shop eventually became a historical landmark, with a small plaque noting that Olivia Marshall Carter, renowned seamstress and matriarch of the Carter ranching family, had once struggled to make ends meet in that very location. Tourists would stop and read it, perhaps imagining that desperate young woman sitting in the window with her sewing, hoping for customers that never came. They could not know, reading that plaque, about the love story that had unfolded, about the rancher who saw beyond the struggling seamstress to the woman beneath, who had been patient enough and creative enough to give her time to see him clearly in return, about how 6 shirts had been the beginning of a marriage that lasted more than half a century and created a legacy that would endure for generations. But the family knew. Every Carter child grew up hearing the story, understanding that their family's prosperity had been built on foundation of creativity, persistence, and love. They learned that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is leave everything familiar behind and try to build something new. They learned that sometimes help comes from unexpected directions and takes unexpected forms. They learned that love, real love, is patient and kind and willing to wait for the right moment. And they learned that a life well lived is not measured in grand moments, but in the accumulation of days spent with people you love, doing work that matters, building something that will last beyond your own lifetime. The story of Declan and Olivia Carter became more than just family history. It became a reminder that even in our lowest moments, even when we feel we have made terrible mistakes and wasted precious chances, there is always the possibility that everything might change, that the next person who walks through the door might be the one who changes everything. For Olivia, that person had been Declan. For Declan, it had been Olivia. And from their meeting, from those 6 shirts commissioned more from love than need, had grown something beautiful and enduring that touched countless lives across more than a century. It was a simple story, really. A seamstress with no customers, a rancher who ordered enough work to keep her close. 2 people who took a chance on each other and built a life that mattered. But sometimes the simple stories are the ones worth telling, the ones worth preserving, the ones worth passing down through generations as a reminder of what is possible when we choose love and persistence and hope over fear and despair and defeat. And so the story lives on, told and retold, a piece of family history and local legend and enduring truth. A reminder that the greatest love stories do not always start with passion and drama. Sometimes they start with kindness and patience. Sometimes they start with 6 shirts and a desperate hope. And sometimes, if we are very lucky, they last forever.